all the measures that are going to be proposed will be justified and balanced. They have come from consultations. So we do not believe that there are measures that are not going to be balanced or justified. The most important thing is to ask ourselves, where are we going? We have to have some short-term sacrifices for us to achieve the long-term. That is an important component that you really need to worry about.
All right, now that's the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, talking about some of the sacrifices that have to be made, and of course the measures that are proposed, saying they are justified and balanced. Of course, he read that budget, 3.67, or is it 3.7 trillion shillings, with the priority areas, like I had said, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda mentioned there. I just want to highlight how much has been allocated to each of them. Because you're talking about the areas of agriculture, which has attracted about 80 billion shillings. You're talking about universal health coverage, which has attracted 141 billion shillings. MSMEs has attracted 13 billion shillings, including 10 billion shillings for the Hustler Fund. Then housing agenda has been allocated 35 billion shillings, but the money for affordable housing is about 3.2 billion shillings, and other resources for slum improvement or upgrading phase 2, about 5 billion shillings. We also know, I mean, those are some of the areas that in the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, some resources obviously out of the 3.67 trillion shillings. And also we know that there is a deficit of 718 billion shillings, much of which will be borrowed in the country, some 580 billion shillings, and 130 billion shillings will be borrowed from the external market. Honorable Robert Mbui, despite the walkout, I'm sure you've been able to interact with some of these figures and the agenda of the Kenya Kwanza administration. Does it speak to the pre-election promises? And when you look at those specific allocations for those 5 pillars of the bottom-up economic transformation, do you see consistency between the promise and what is on paper now?
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Sam, please allow me, because, you know, I've sat here patiently and quietly and listened to members that are constantly holding brief for the executive, who don't seem to know that, you know, the executive is completely independent of the legislative arm. My 2 colleagues here have continuously said, oh, we know we are part of government. And as we all know, as Kenyans, this Kenya Kwanza government is full of lies. And I want to call out a few lies I've just talked about here. On the matter of walking out on the CS, there was no debate. So when you argue that we walked out on a debate because we should have been there debating, that's a lie, because the CS is meant to be, the standing orders are clear, supposed to be heard in silence. So all we did is refuse to listen to him and walked out. That didn't stop him from reading his statement. We didn't want to sit there and maybe cause a scene. So that is not true. Second one is the committee, the report of the committee was not available for debate before it was tabled, and it was tabled at 10 p.m. Now, you cannot argue here and tell us there are only 1 or 2 amendments. So what kind of person would do a 400-page document so that they can talk about 1 or 2 amendments? Honestly, you know, we have to be fair. Then there is talk about snatching of phones. I mean, when a member says that, you know, it's like you witnessed another one snatching a phone, really, if there was such, if you were able to see that, then it would have been addressed. These are the stories that are being created after that fiasco in the House to make some of our members look bad. But there was nothing like snatching of phones. I think that what we saw was water being splashed on people. And then there was no suspension. You know, let's just talk the facts. There was no suspension of a period beyond 2 weeks. The maximum suspension given was actually 2 weeks. And of course, you have to allow us, because if we feel that the House is being run in a dictatorial manner, then you have to allow us to ventilate in our own ways. Because if you have the numbers to do what you want, then allow us also to express our dissatisfaction in whichever way we feel is necessary. Now, on the issue of this budget, Sam, the Kenya Kwanza came to power on a promise of elevating those that are downtrodden, the mama mboga, the border borders, and you know, those people in the kiosks. That is what they talked to them about and said they're going to change their lives, they're going to uplift them and make life really rosy. But when you look at the amount of money that is being spent on recurrent expenditure by the executive just for them to be comfortable, you know, if you're talking about dynasties and hustlers, and then anything that is of showing opulence is a direct opposite of what the hustlers expected. This team has spent a lot of money on foreign trips. The budget of the office of the president has gone up. The budget for the deputy president is very high. The budget for the prime cabinet secretary is extremely high. I think this regime is not being fair to these Kenyans, because when we are talking about the tax measures, we are increasing taxes so that we can be able to support government programs. If it was only about development and maybe just salaries of the staff that have always been in government, that would be another thing. But to increase, you know, money in the offices of the executive, the president himself, his deputy, I think that is, in my opinion, I think is rather unfortunate. And let me say that you've seen that the budget for defense has gone up, NIS has gone up. Kenya is not at war. So I don't want to dwell much in the issues of defense. The chair is here. But I'll talk about NIS. Why are we putting in so much more money in NIS? Is it maybe because this is not a vote that we can properly oversight? Because, you know, there's a lot of secrecy that some of these votes are shrouded in. Could that be the avenue by which they can be able to, you know, access some money that we cannot be able to ask questions? Why increase budgets like for health when health is a devolved function, and then you are stifling and refusing to increase money in the counties? I think, in my opinion, that there was a lot more discussion that needed to have taken place on the issue of this budget. And for me, I think I have a lot of reservations on some of them. But my main concern is that you don't increase expenditure when you don't have the money.
Was that avenue of more debates available to members of parliament before Thursday?
It was available before the time when the question on the estimates was put. That was the best time to address it.
Which is Tuesday.
When they quickly said, before we finish our debate, they quickly said, put the question. And that means the speaker rises, puts a question, and then they vote for it. That was, before that would have been the best time for us to canvass our opinions. Yes.
I'm trying to trace the figure for NIS. I could be mistaken.
NIS.
Sorry, NIS. I could be mistaken, but is it some 43 billion shillings, yeah? I don't know if you have any explanation for that, because it feels that maybe there's no possibility of oversight.
Yeah. You know, it's become an easy punch bag, and National Intelligence Service and Defense. Let me start with Defense. Ministry of Defense actually has a funding gap of 90 billion. When you do budgets also, it is imperative, Honorable Mbui, that you look also what happens in the region. You've seen, like my colleague Naomi did mention at the beginning before she spoke, there's been attacks on our officers at the border. We are trying to de-escalate our officers and bring them back from Somalia. It involves so much money. And I can tell you the budget that we have, 70.2% of the entire budget of the Ministry of Defense is personnel and emoluments. That's it. We have a budget of 143 billion or thereabout, the Ministry of Defense. 70.2% go to personnel and emoluments. In fact, if you look at what we need to purchase, for instance, a fighter jet alone is not enough with this kind of a budget. We must continuously engage on external credit arrangement financing for our officers to be fully kitted and equipped. So it is to say that there's a lot of money that has been allocated to the Ministry of Defense is being unfair to the Ministry of Defense. We have a huge shortfall at the moment. There are so many things that I won't say here that we're still lacking as a Ministry of Defense. which I think we must find a way of making sure that they are fully resourced. National Intelligence Service. There is so much that is done by National Intelligence Service that many people do not understand because of probably the mystery surrounding it in its creation before, when it was a special branch. National Intelligence Service has so much that it's doing. Number one is making sure that they get information of what is going on everywhere in the country. That information has to be relayed. To get information, there's so much that is supposed to be used. In fact, with sophistication of terrorism, they have had to purchase so many equipment that is supposed to aid their performance, their daily performance. 43 billion is extremely, extremely modest. We've gone through it. We went through, and the wisdom of our committee, they still have a huge funding. Actually, they have a funding gap of almost 18 billion Kenya shillings. 18 billion Kenya shillings. So it is.
And how are you able to oversight? Because he says there's a bit of difficulty in that.
We oversight. We look at how their money is spent. Most of it is modernization, getting laboratories, employing people. You know, intelligence is so expensive. Even in the media houses here, you have people who are being paid a stipend by intelligence. Are you aware? So there are so many things that happen. It's not cheap that people think that it is a one day. But beyond that, of course, they also have their own staff. They also they have a lab and many other things that aid their intelligence collection and information dissemination.
Okay.
And I will leave it there for now.
Honorable Oluoch, your take especially on the estimates themselves versus priority areas as declared by the Kenya Kwanza administration during the campaigns.
Yeah, let me get into that in a minute. I just want to respond to Honorable Koech's issue of a 90 billion gap. He says, you know, when you look at our region, you need to compare and see what comparatively our peers are doing. But the question is, let's look at this government when it came in. It says they inherited empty coffers. We have a depressed economy. We are not collecting enough. At a time when we have cost of living and all these things that are putting us to the point where we have to tax Kenyans more, is this the time to increase NIS spending, to increase defense spending on modernization? The answer is no. I think that the priorities on that score, in my view, are upside down. But allow me to look at what the priorities of this government were in respect of one particular item. I think they said they would lift the lives of the hustlers, and particularly to try and do job creation. That's the focus that I want to do that and to put today and relate it to the budget that we are putting on education. So the question is, what kind of jobs are we actually creating? Because the narrative has been pushed that we are getting into houses because we are going to create X number of jobs over a period of time. My question is it the policy of this government that the jobs that we promise the people are manual jobs? Because the only jobs that you can get out of this housing, even if you do it continuously for a period of 10 years, they are those jobs that you do that are manual. The same jobs that are not so different from what they bastardized, like the Kazi Mtaani, where you go, no skills acquisition, there is no expertise, no education that is put into these people, nothing sustainable that you can use to get our hustler people from where they are to middle class level, where they can earn a salary and save, where they can earn a salary and put themselves in a position where they can get themselves a housing, where they can get a mortgage, where they can pay their own health care and sustain their livings. Right. These are manual jobs. And I want to compare that with the priorities that we put in terms of education. If you look at the entire education sector, about 630 billion, 323 of which goes to TSC, mostly hiring teachers, and I think that's really recurrent expenditures. Look at the basic education. Basic education, which in my view, if you focused on properly, you would be able to get our people from where they are as hustlers. If they are not of school-going category, you put them into TVET so that they do skills acquisition. My people in Mathare can get into plumbing, finish all the pending TVETs. And I raised this, Koech, if you remember, at the committee stage where we said, why are we not putting enough money to finish cumulatively at the same time all the pending TVETs, the ones that have not been done and the ones that are yet to be started. That way, you're really speaking to the hustler whom you want to put into jobs, so that when you put housing, they're going to be able to be skilled to do the welding jobs, they can be able to do the electrical jobs, they can be able to do all the plumbing and other jobs. You are putting 30-something billion shillings on housing, where hustler is really just going to do manual jobs and 500 shillings a day, spend 400 out of it, and probably end up not saving anything. You look at our capitation. Our capitation out of 168 billion, capitation has remained at 1,410 for the last 10 years. It has remained unreviewed for 10 years. Now, I interacted with people in the education sector a few days ago at a forum, and their research shows that it takes 7,400 shillings to capitalize one student at the current economic status. One student, 7,400. If you add the question of CBC and all the add-ons that it has brought on, it doubles according to their research. So you're talking about...
this 7,400 is for what level? Primary or secondary?
This is for the secondary level for capitation, but now you get into CBC, you have CBC at the upper primary level, isn't it? But if you just take one student, either at primary or secondary, let me take secondary for example, it takes 7,400 to do capitation for one student. We are at 1,410 for the last 10 years. This is just one question of wrong priorities of this government. We are putting about 260 something on infrastructure. And don't get me wrong, we need infrastructure. I need a lot of infrastructure in my constituency. But where are our priorities? You have about 141 billion put into health, being held at the national level on a devolved function. So if you ask me, these priorities are wrong. Back to the issue of education, school feeding program that can be able to put our children in schools so these people can continuously learn uninterrupted. They don't have to break to go home over lunch hours in my constituency. The money they have put can only feed 2.3 million out of a possible 17 million students in school. Talking about priorities, they could probably have cut a little bit of what they have spent in defense, and I know he thinks this is a punching bag, and cut a little bit on what they have put at the national level on health if they don't want to take it to the counties. Take it to education. Education budget, in my view, at least basic education, could have been at least double of that amount. I want to conclude that by saying, so that we get the magnitude of why we are underfunding education, and today I decided to focus on this in relation to their priorities on job creation and lifting the hustlers. We have a category of unaccounted students or pupils who are called, who go to schools called Alternative Provision for Basic Education, APBET. These are people who go to school in informal settlements in Mathare, Kibera, Mukuru, all the major cities, where today, on a Sunday like yesterday, it is a church. On Monday, it is a school. It is a Mabati structure where youths use it for a hall to do taekwondo or to do boxing or to do whatever it is in the evening. During the week, it is a school. The Basic Education Act defines a school to be either public school or private school. Now, this category of what I am calling APBET schools are not anywhere, and they are a whopping 1.8 million Kenyans. 1.8. At a time when in our constitution we are talking about 100% transition to school, equity, equalization, access of these facilities for everybody. 1.8 million Kenyans are not within the bracket of basic education. Do you know what that means, Sam? It means that we do not plan for their capitation. We do not plan for their infrastructure funding because the schools are not recognized. They are not registered. We do not give TAC teachers to them. So the upshot of all that I am trying to say in the end of it is that there is so much that we could have done to actualize the Kenya Kwanza government's idea of trying to ensure that we lift the standards of living by getting these people into meaningful jobs, and meaningful jobs means we get our education system correct and get these people to be able to get proper jobs, not manual jobs.
Honorable, there's something you said about the capitation. You're putting it at 1,400. I think you're talking about primary school students, because for secondary school it's 22,240 per learner, in public schools, obviously. So then I guess that would explain your figures, which you're putting at 7,400 shillings per learner at the primary school. Of course, I mean, I haven't independently verified it, but that's your figure. Honorable Wako, I'm just wondering, because when I look at the summary of the bottom-up economic agenda, economic transformation, agriculture, under that specifically allocated 49.9 billion. MSMEs, you find 10 billion shillings for the Hustler Fund. In total, alongside the other funds, is about 13 billion. Housing program, 35.3 billion shillings, but the affordable housing has been allocated just 3.2 billion. Universal health coverage, 141.2 billion. Digital economy, 15.1 billion. It comes to a total of 219 billion shillings. Against the budget of 3.67, it's just 5.9%. What does this say about a government that came in and said that this is our agenda, but the agenda is allocated less than 6%? 6%.
The main reason behind that is because of the other commitments that we have. And the other commitments I'm talking about is like the school feeding program. We've debated on that and requested that we revive that. And 5 billion has been put towards that. And then when it comes to the conditional grants under all the counties, because we have introduced what we call industrial parks in regional places, and that takes 47 billion out of the budget, so that at least we have the regional industrial parks in almost all the areas. Then we have 3 billion to finish the stalled markets. Since 2008,
Sorry, how much did you say has been allocated to industrial parks?
47 billion.
No, it's 4.7.
Is it 4.7?
Yeah, 4.7.
It's 4.7.
Yeah.
But it is 3 billion for almost all the parks.
Yeah.
No, it's 4.7 billion shillings.
Cumulatively.
Not 47.
So that would be like perhaps maybe 100 million per county. If you divide 4.7 by
47.
Yeah, by 47.
By 47. Okay, I didn't do that.
I think there is there is some money that counties themselves are allocating. Yesterday I was in Kajiado with the Member of Parliament for Kajiado South, and I heard the Deputy Governor there say that the government has put 100 million. They have matched up by putting 250. I think, and we oversight the trade committee where I am in, and Moses Kuri, I think, they entered some kind of arrangement with the counties where they put in X amount of money, which I think is the 100 billion, and they have asked the counties to put counterpart, I think, which is 250 billion or something like that.
No, you mean
million. It's million.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway, so he's consuming. And then 25 billion for clearing arrears for oil subsidy. So when you look at all this, and then 5 billion to the fertilizer, when you look at all this, we have to just limit ourselves with what we did to the many promises that we made. But the burden that we have is to take care of this nation at this particular time, because we are coming, it is like we are coming from a crisis, and we want to make sure that we stabilize within the next 1 or 2 years. And unless we take that serious action, we may not be able to realize that dream. And if we refer to the campaign promises that we all made, yes, we made a lot of promises to our people, but Azimio also did the same, because they promised people 6,000.
But they are not in office.
They are not in office. They promised 6,000. They promised 6,000 to the people. And so we also made our promises, and we are trying to keep our promises. With them, they have lost. They are waiting for their time to come.
Granted, I mean, fine, fine with the explanation.
Yes.
But do you feel 5.9% is sufficient for the bottom-up economic agenda?
Well, it is not sufficient. It is not sufficient.
In a 3.6 trillion.
Yes.
Is there something that could have been done? Because there's been these complaints that, yes, you're looking for resources, but you're not dealing with expenditure. Still, it's rising, actually. Expenditure
has to rise because the cost of everything is rising. It's going up. And so the expenditure will continue going up for some time. But we are doing our best to take care of our hustlers and including all the people of this nation. So when we have allocated 5 billion, I think to start with, that is better than nothing that we,
Okay.
Yes.
I want us to take a look at feedback and also listen to what Principal Secretary Chris Kiptoo said about, but let's first look at what Kenyans are saying. Via Twitter, as Citizen TV Kenya, Sam Gituku, the hashtag to use is daybreak. Engineer Lazaro, Honorable Koech and Oluoch, please, Kenyans are keenly watching the unfolding of events. In fact, we are taking record. We shall judge MPs who fail to show solidarity with the voiceless Kenyans when punitive taxes start to bite. Okay. Babu Michael, with all said and done, so long as the common Mwananchi is not able to put food on the table, then all the sweet words we hear around are just that, sweet words. Lowering the cost of living, getting good services is all we need from the government. Bobo Tieno, walking out on CS Ndungu's budget reading by Azimio was uncalled for because many Kenyans were looking upon them to fight for them in parliament, as they always claim in political rallies. And Remy Butia, initiatives that encourage accountability should be put in place to curb corruption. Such may include service providers, contractual obligations. For instance, road repair works should have quality guarantees. Okay, all right. That's your take, and we'll look at more later on. But first, PS Chris Kiptoo spoke about where we are as a country and why the situation might actually get more painful.
We have a debt situation that is not allowing us to borrow more because we have 10 trillion by law, and now we are almost at the limit. So we have to look at it and say, do we finance through borrowing, or we have to do other alternative ways, maybe raise more taxes or other ways. So these are the things that is going into the budget making process, and my minister therefore will be presenting the totality of all the things that we have considered. And of course there will be, I will only say that it's good that if we have to grow our nation, it is important not to grow our nation through debt. Given additional resources, even a few months ago we have given additional resources to Kenya Revenue Authority to get not just the human resource, but also additional capacity by way of infrastructure, so that they do not have a reason to say they can't raise.
All right. So a government that is keen on, of course, raising the collections because of the situation you're in, a deficit of 718 billion shillings, 580 billion shillings to be borrowed within the country. Honorable Koech, before I get back to Honorable Mbui, so we understand that there's an amendment in the Finance Bill 2023 that seeks to turn the housing levy into a tax to be taken into the consolidated fund. But how do you take some money in terms of taxation and it's destined for affordable housing, but affordable housing is not reflected in the budget estimates with the expected collections?
I think the biggest capital on affordable housing that the government is providing is land. Like the president has indicated, investors, because the model that is going to be used here is on PPP. So people will come with the money, the government provides you with the land, and you build. The government then has this pool of finances that now will be used against the buildings as a guarantee for any financial.
Honorable Koech, I thought that was the early explanation, because it has changed, or it's changing from housing levy to housing tax.
It is still, what I think the end game still
just hold on,
is.
let me just pose the question. When it becomes a tax, So it's part of the pool of resources that the government can utilize. Where is the matching budget estimate to say that this is going to be spent on building houses for this amount? Because initially we were told that the estimated revenue from that was supposed to be 9 billion shillings. I don't know that has changed with the changing rate. But why is it not in the budget? Or what is going to happen?
I have not looked at the amendment that the Finance Committee is bringing on that particular vote.
Wait a minute. I thought you said you guys were prepared and we're the ones who are coming to this debate.
1 second, because this one,
having not
this one hang on, I don't overload. This one is something that is going to come up tomorrow. We have 48 amendments from the Finance Committee, and I hope they can be on the House so that we go through item by item. But safe to say at this moment that indeed the Chair of Finance did indicate that they've made it now a tax, and that is going to come out tomorrow very clearly on what.
So should it be proposed. Part of the estimates, or we should just forget about it and continue the initial plan of having a fund? I mean, where are we now?
I'm sure if it is going to be a tax, then it means that it's going to go to the consolidated account. So it means that we have to structure it to. Now that it means there are other mechanisms that will be provided by the Finance Committee then on how to utilize it specifically for the housing development, which I think it's something that now that we will be undertaking. I don't want to make mistake and get misquoted on what the Finance Committee is going to bring tomorrow. It is safe at this point to say I will wait and read it, then I can debate it soberly when it gets to the floor of the House.
Now, Sam, you understand why it was important to let everybody read that report. It's coming out very clearly. Why were we being rushed? It's very clear that we all needed time to consume these reports, and I accept the argument and the explanation by my colleague that he needs to be accurate, meaning we all needed time to consume this. This is a tax that is going to affect Kenyans for the next 1 year. And with enormous confusion as to whether it was a levy, whether it was a tax. If it is a tax, you cannot tell people that when you get taxed, you cannot claim it later. If it was a saving, saving is voluntary. And you look at Article 201, it says that a tax that is put in place must be simple, accountable and transparent. There is so much confusion, and even as we speak now, it means we don't even know what we are passing.
No, because tomorrow, let me just, because it took my time, I'm just saying that tomorrow is at that stage. Tomorrow is that stage where amendments are introduced. It is at that point, then all of us will socialize with any sort of amendments that is being introduced, either by the Finance Committee or by members.
Let's listen to the President as he spoke to this question of the Finance Bill and what Honorable Koech is saying is about to happen tomorrow.
Tuesday, wako bunge. Wapige kura, wapitishe ama waangushe. It's just as simple as that. Mimi nataka nijue kama wewe ni mbunge. Wewe unaenda kupiga kura ati tuendelee kulete furniture kutoka nje, watoto wa hapa Kakamega waendelee kung'ethi hapa. Hakuna kitu wanafanya. Ile program yetu ya housing, kiini yake kubwa sio nyumba, kiini yake kubwa ni ajira. That's what we are looking for. Kwani mnafikiri nyinyi mtatoa wapi kazi ya kupatia hawa vijana wengi hawa?
Yes,
okay. A lot of voices also here in studio reacting to what the President just said. He says that kiini kubwa sio nyumba, kiini kubwa ni ajira. I don't know what that means. Maybe we can try to unpack that. Honorable Mbui, as you reflect on that, I had the Budget Committee Chair, Ndindi Nyoro, on Thursday here, and he was saying that despite the situation we find ourselves in, so the collection can begin, the money will be packed at the National Treasury, and ultimately, once the framework is in place, then it can start to get implemented. What are we doing exactly?
You know, Sam, it's very difficult dealing with a regime that from the first day, and even from the time of campaigns, almost everything they say is a lie. You know, the president himself during campaigns promised budget cuts. The first thing he does is push up the budget. Now, he also, on this housing matter, he was not being very honest to the Kenyans that were listening to him, because he said the 3% tax, and by the way, please note that he referred to 3%. The committee is trying to propose at 1.5, yes. But I can tell you that he intends to veto the decision of the House. Yes. Because clearly, if it was yesterday and he knows that the committee report, he must have been briefed by the committee in advance. If he still insists on 3%, it means he's likely to insist on the 3% going forward. And he says this 3% is a tax on individuals that are paid by taxpayers. That was one of the things that I heard him clearly say. And that is not the truth. Because the people that he addressed that are paid by taxpayers were himself and his executive, MPs, MCAs. He talked about teachers, he talked about doctors and chiefs and probably those county commissioners and such. But you know, Sam, the reality is that the bill is proposing that this tax is imposed upon every employed Kenyan. You know, the government employs a very small percentage of Kenyans that are in gainful employment. So when he sets the public against civil servants and the state officers by saying they're refusing to give 3%, yet you are the ones who pay them because they're earning from taxpayers' money, that's very, very far from the truth. The reality is that the government employees are very few. Yes, there will be tax if this passes, but the majority of Kenyans that will be taxed are out there in the formal sector who are earning salaries. For example, the employees of the Royal Media Services are not paid by taxpayers. They will be expected to pay this tax. I'm just asking that can the executive of this country be fair to Kenyans and speak the truth? Because every time they speak, it is not the truth. On the houses, they have severally implied that, you know, these houses are going to be helping us to be able to get people out of the informal settlements. There is absolutely nowhere in this law and nowhere in their regulations and no plan at all to build houses so that they can upgrade people that are in the slums. What they have told us all along is that it is the people that are contributing, and these are the employees who are supposed to benefit from these houses. If it was a slum upgrading program, that's a different thing. If they say they'll go to Mathare and build houses, little better houses, or go to Kibra and build, that's not what they're doing. They're saying you pay, you be taxed, and then we build houses, then some of you will qualify to get these houses. The other thing is about the job creation issue that he has said. He says, the main intention behind our housing policy is not just to provide cheap houses, but to, how does he put it? He says, to create employment. Yeah. But I have said this over and over again. The employment in the construction industry is temporary. The people who build these houses are not working here anymore. You know, they build those houses, a few months the houses are over, and that's when the job ends there. It's not a permanent job. You know, it's not like you're an accountant or a doctor or a teacher that you wake up every day, you have a salary, you go to work. These people will come, do the construction, and then that's it. So for me, I think the issue of saying that they're creating jobs for Kenyans is not true. But then finally, allow me to say this. There's a major contradiction between what they say and what they impose in taxes. If your intention is to create affordable houses, then obviously the inputs in construction would have to be affordable. And that is cement and things like steel. Yes. You are trying to make cement expensive by imposing huge taxes on all the cement that is imported. At the same time, even raw material that you don't have enough of, like clinker, you impose a huge tax on importation of clinker. You know we don't have enough clinker locally, locally available. So that means that eventually you're making cement expensive. How do you have expensive cement and cheap houses? You're making steel, which we don't have enough of again. The importation of steel, you insist again on imposing huge taxes. So you make it expensive, and you're saying you want to make the houses affordable. Because that is what to be used for windows, doors, the metal bars for building. I think, for me, the contradictions are just too many.
But the argument that you want to sort of put that protectionist measure so that you promote the local industry.
Precisely.
How do you take that?
Sam, let me tell you, you cannot protect an industry which is local if they do not have the raw materials. If we don't have enough, if we had enough clinker in Kenya, we would not need to import. We're importing because we don't have enough. And again, let me tell you, if you want to make something cheap and affordable, then you must also allow competition. are we building the person who's manufacturing cement? Because I think there may be some protection towards some, cement manufacturers. Is that what is being done? Or are we trying to build the industry of construction? So you cannot, on one hand, you're saying, we want to have affordable houses, but at the same time, you're trying to make sure that the inputs into construction are too expensive. So for me, I think there is a major contradiction, and that is why every time I see some of these leaders on TV, I switch off and wait for the next show.
No, they are watching you.
And how do they do it?
You are telling people to switch off. You are telling
They
people
can
to
switch off when they see me.
Honorable Wako, I mean, what is your take? Because it appears like this is an idea that is still work in progress. Do you feel it's being rushed, especially on the housing tax or levy, whatever the name will be, after tomorrow and the day after?
For this government, this is the right time for us to do whatever we want to do, and in terms of finances and putting policies in place so that we continue working. If we don't do that, then we delay. The more we delay, the more we waste time. And that is why this is the right time for us to do what we are doing. And after tomorrow, of course, we will know. Kenyans will get it clearer. But you know, before we were saying it is 3%. And 3% kind of savings, and you benefit from the house. And after 7 years, if you don't want, then you get back your money. But because Kenyans raised a lot of concerns, then as we always said, Kenya Kwanza government is a listening government. We were able to listen, and we said, okay, that may not work then. Let us just have 1.5%. And that will help us to build a house.
So Kenyans told you they don't want the money back?
Yes, they said they don't. They said, some of them said we don't want the money back. Some said it is too much, and a lot of cry. So
okay, so they said it's too much. You reduced it to 1.5%.
Yes.
Yet you removed the cap of 5,000 shillings. Now it's no longer there.
Yes.
Meaning if you earn 1 million shillings, 1.5% to be 15,000. It should have been 2,500.
Yes. Yes.
So who did you listen to? They said they want to contribute more.
No, they didn't say that, but they said the 3%. They said the 3% was too much, and of course the other details.
I mean, that's what I'm asking, because 3% versus 1.5. Of course, 1.5% is smaller than 3%.
Yes, but the cap, yeah.
But if you have a cap of 5,000 shillings, it is way higher than someone who is earning about 167,000, because now it ceases being maximum 2,500.
But Sam, the question you should ask yourself, or us, we should ask ourselves, is how many Kenyans earn 1 million?
No.
Then,
these are Kenyans that you're listening to.
Yes.
If someone is earning 167,000 shillings, they'll contribute more than 2,500 shillings.
Yes.
Because you have removed the cap.
Yes.
Is that what they told you they want to happen?
They said they don't want the 3%. So the 3% is what we have worked on, and we said, okay, let us reduce to 1.5. And in doing that, we are responding to the concerns Kenyans raised. The other details will come later. And what
later how? And it's effective 1st of July?
It is effective 1st of July. We have this week to work on it, and Kenyans will get to know the effect of that. And 1.5 is what every Kenyan will contribute, and that is to enable us build houses for fellow Kenyans.
Does it bother you that you are collecting money whose structure of implementation you don't have?
It doesn't bother me, because we have structures in place that will take care of that.
Which ones?
We have the Treasury, we have the Finance Committee, we have the Ministry of Housing that is working on that day and night, so that everything will be clear, and they will continue, preparing Kenyans and telling Kenyans what is happening.
You know, Honorable Wako, that is fine. But the administration of Kenya Kwanza,
yes,
in its first financial year that it passed its budget, it will be judged based on that document.
Yes.
And I am telling you that you are going to introduce a housing tax of 1.5%, limitless.
Yes.
Money will be collected by the KRA.
Yes.
And the money will be deposited with the
Treasury.
Central Bank, taken care of by the National Treasury. There's no budget line on how it will be spent. So how shall you hold you accountable?
I'm sure once money is collected, we must be accountable.
Yeah, you must.
Yeah, we
but
must.
There's an oversight. There's oversight that must happen. How is Parliament to oversight?
You know what we are trying to express now is the fear you have and the fear that Kenyans have.
There's a reason why the budget estimates came as a budget policy statement to the National Assembly. The budget lines were taken to the line committees. The committees did public participation. They came back with a report. The Budget and Appropriations Committee came up with a report tabled before the House, and it was approved. There is no line on affordable housing to be funded by the housing tax that has gone through all what I've explained. How then will you oversight it as Parliament?
We will be able to oversight.
How will you do that, Honorable Oloch?
Yeah, and I think that's the point that I need to, and let me introduce this new line of argument, and I want to put across this thesis. You know, Article 24 allows limitation of rights, and I want to make this controversial point that a tax is a limitation on a certain right, because you're taxing people on money that they have earned, which is a property right, isn't it? So what Article 24 says is that you cannot limit a right except by law. So granted, they have put the finance bill, which is a tax. But there are other things that you need to look into, and which you've asked and which are not being answered here, is that are there the necessary legal and regulatory framework that allows for oversight, that allows for accountability, which are contemplated alongside putting a tax or a levy? And my answer is no. The second thing is, when you look at Article 24, is that when you limit a right, and in this instance I'm trying to argue or put across this thesis, that a tax taking away people's money is a limitation on their enjoyment of that right. You need to look at other parameters, whether are there other less effective ways that you could have achieved the same thing without having to put this punitive or other whatever tax into it. And my answer is that if you had relooked and thought through properly on the proper model for housing, you probably would have achieved housing without necessarily having to put a tax on people. And the way I would have unpack it is this. We all know that we need to do housing. We need to think through, do we need affordable housing? And look at Article 43. People have confused what Article 43 says. It says the government will put in place mechanism to ensure access to affordable housing. It does not talk about the government will ensure a right to own a house. It is access to an affordable house. So how do you get that affordable house? You can do it in the market-oriented, profit-oriented way in which you create an environment where people can do business, have less restrictive business licenses. The private sector partnerships can come in to put affordable housing. Materials are available properly so that the private sector, through partnerships, can ensure Kenyans have affordable housing. So that middle-class people like you and me can therefore then be able to work, get a mortgage, and get an affordable house. Now, social and community housing, which would still speak to Article 43, would then mean then that we can get into our taxes, pay VAT, and other things, and ensure that we create the slum upgrading aspect of it, community housing, and still be able to achieve the same concept of housing without necessarily having to put a tax. Now, when you talk about what model they have put in place here, it is so confused that you do not know how these people are going to achieve this without a legal and regulatory framework in its place. My last point on this is, when you put a legal regulatory framework, what you allow then us to do is to say that let the government focus on the 35 billion that they have allocated to housing and urban development. Use that to do community social housing, upgrade Mathare and all those other people without a tax. You have already allocated, and housing committee can then be able, because it's a line item, to be able to make follow-up on that. So that's something that they need to do. If you wanted to do this other affordable housing aspect of it, then create regulations in which you say a certain amount of tax that we get from payee or VAT or other things will be collected by national governments and then given as a conditional grant to the counties whose role it is to implement housing under Schedule 4. So my view is this thing was so rushed, and in the end, it appears to me that the government has said we don't want to borrow externally, so they want to create a pool of money to borrow from the local person in the guise of housing tax.
But a housing tax then, it's not borrowing, because borrowing,
they are borrowing. They are creating.
but it's not coming back.
A pool of funds to run away from. They want to create a pool of funds from which to get money.
Is that so, Honorable Koech?
That's my view.
I don't think so. I think if we, the problem is we seem to think that the entire budget and the finance bill is all about housing fund.
It is not. It
is not, but this component of our argument is about housing.
Like the President has said, I think partly and bigly, it is on on unemployment of young people out there.
No, Honorable Koech, you're mistaken on that. I started by saying that the allocation to the housing and settlement is 35.3 billion shillings.
Yes.
And I said that affordable housing has been allocated 3.2 billion shillings. I was asking a question on the housing levy tax contribution based on what we'll conclude tomorrow. Let's listen to what a member of parliament said. That is Gathoni wa Mushomba, who was in Githunguri in the presence of the president. She has been very vocal against the finance bill. She had a moment with the president.
Wakulima wangu, asanteni sana kwa kunishikilia, asanteni sana kwa kuniombea, na mimi ninaapa ya kwamba nitafanya kazi yangu kama mjumbe bila kuogopa na bila kuingiza baridi. Asanteni sana.
Nataka niulize wewe, hao wananchi wamekusaidia mpaka umepata kazi, wewe unapata mshahara. Alafu hao wananchi unawakataza 3% watoto wao wapate kazi pia. Please. Sijui kama tunaelewana jameni. Ati nyinyi watu wa Githunguri mnasema hamtaki mambo ya housing. Mnasema hamtaki mambo ya housing. Nini mnataka hawa vijana wengi barabarani mtatoa wapi kazi ya kuwapatia?
Okay, all right. I don't know if any of you would want to be in such a situation, but Honorable Koech, so finally, so what next about this?
About what?
About the particular issue you're talking about, the housing levy, because the president keeps getting back to 3%. She talks about 1.5%. The finance.
Yeah, I think the president is talking in the context of his earlier statement, and of course, it is we, the members of parliament, who are privy to exactly what is going on. I will still want to insist that I will leave it up to tomorrow, when Finance Committee will fully now table their amendments or how they expect us to proceed with this. On the issue of my colleague, Gathoni wa Mushomba, I want to laud my party, UDA, for not taking any disciplinary action against anyone who is of contrary view from what we hold. I mean, most of us are in sync with what the president and the Kenya Kwanza agenda is. We want to support it in Parliament. But a few of our colleagues, if they hold a contrary opinion, we do not punish them like our colleagues from Azimio.
How happy are the party leaders, the president and the deputy, with her and her sentiments?
It doesn't matter whether you're happy or not. The issue is that she holds a contrary opinion, which we respect. And if you've seen, it's not an exchange. And we've not sent anyone any letter to show cause why disciplinary action should not be taken against them. I've seen Honorable Passaris has been issued with a summon to show cause. I've seen the other colleagues who supported it. In fact, most of the colleagues who were supporting this finance bill from the other side had to hide from voting, taking a vote, which is not democratic at all. So we want to urge our colleagues, especially those in leadership, including Robert Mbui, that please allow democracy to reign in Azimio. Allow democracy to reign in your parties. Do not crack whip where it is unnecessary. Members of parliament are representatives of the people. They have been sent to parliament to exercise their democratic right of voting. They listen to their people. If their people want housing, if their people support a section of this finance bill, it is totally unfair and dictatorial to punish them. They should be allowed
to
express
I think
themselves
we shouldn't let that
freely.
to go unresponded to.
Can I hear Honorable Boy first?
Thank you. And when you listen to Nelson Koech here, you know, being so aggressive about this, it surprises me. Hasn't he just watched the TV where the president himself has curiously developed an interest of going to Githunguri the week when Wamuchomba voted against the finance bill, and then goes there and attempts to intimidate her publicly. And I'm very happy that the honorable member has stood her ground, because she said she's listening to the people that have represented her. And I think that intimidation, if there was anyone I would say that would be shamed, is a person of the head of state going to intimidate a member of parliament. Let the executive keep their lane and allow parliament to also do its work. And please, let us listen to the cries of the people. The people who wrote to us today, when I saw the feedback, they're talking about the issue of cost of living. And that is why when we meet tomorrow, we will still continue fighting to ensure that this 16% they are putting on VAT, we will fight it, VAT on fuel. We will still fight the 3% or 1.5% on housing levy or taxation, because Kenyans are already highly taxed.
Are you proposing amendments?
Yes, we have proposed amendments. You know, we didn't want to propose amendments. We wanted to reject it outrightly. But the minute we saw that they have passed it, now the only avenue left is in amendments.
Okay.
We have proposed all these amendments for almost all those clauses that have issues that are going to make the cost of living unbearable.
What's your proposal quickly on housing levy or tax?
We want to delete the whole of that section. Delete it all.
Okay.
Yes.
You wanted to give a rejoinder as we close.
Yes. The rejoinder that I wanted to give, and I see Naomi is itching to speak. What better sort of sanction can you get if you leave alone the letters that have been written to our members, which is within our rights? You whip members and you whip them by telling them this is the way we are going to vote. Before Githunguri, the president was it Kajiado or Narok a week ago? And he said it in no uncertain terms, issuing a warning to their members of parliament. At that particular time, it was perhaps very clear to the president that there was going to be some dissent within the rank and file of the Kenya Kwanza people. The president and the deputy actually stood in public and gave a stern warning to their members. You go there and you vote for this bill. If you don't, you will not get roads, you will not get this. Those clips should have been played here. So when you're talking about people should be allowed to be democratic, how undemocratic can you get? And the president flew all the way from Meru. I doubt that itinerary of Githunguri was there. The president was going to Githunguri to respond to Gavoni Wamuchomba, whom now we are calling Sibajike.
We don't know that. Yes. You don't know that. Your final word.
Yes, I just want to correct my colleagues that, you know, president had plans of going to Githunguri even before Wamuchomba took a stand on the finance bill.
Okay.
So what he did, he was just... They were in the service, and he was just reacting and responding, but Wamuchomba did, and everybody gave her the opportunity. We didn't talk to her, we didn't intimidate her, and even the speaker gave her time before many of us. That means that, you know, we allow people, we give people the freedom of expression and to do what they want. My only last comment is this. Finance bill and the budget 2023 has been demonized by many. But it has a lot of good things that can help our country. Okay. Yes, we may feel pain at the moment, but in this bill and in the finance bill and in the budget 2023 lies solutions to our current problems.
All right.
So we cannot afford to continue crying, to continue, you know, criticizing ourselves and all these other things. We have to be bold enough and face it now and approve the bill. Of course, the budget has been read, and work hard so that we can realize our dreams.
Okay, all right. I find it interesting that you say you didn't intimidate her, you gave her time.
Yes.
But this was her constituency. She's the host, actually.
Right? Yeah.
But I want to thank all of you for making time for us. Honorable Robert Mbui, Honorable Naomi Wako, Honorable Nelson Koech, and Honorable Anthony Oloch for making time for us to have this conversation. Up next is Sporty Monday. Do stay tuned. Bye for now. My name is Sam Gituko.